Now, energy security is a little bit like happiness. Everyone wants it, but no one's really sure when they've actually got it. In the US, shale gas production would seem to have made the US pretty energy secure, but is it happy? That's one for Gal Luft, who is the co-director of the Institute for Analysis and Global Security, who will be making our next presentation. Please give Gal a warm welcome.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I find this to be an ironic position that we are in today. 40 years ago, a group of Arab, Middle Eastern countries put a choice in front of the world. Support for Israel or oil, choose. And today, Israel is answering back with a choice, oil or something else. So we are to discuss some of the recommendations that we have put together to increase fuel choice, enhance increased prosperity. The United States Energy Security Council that prepared those recommendations was created in 2011, right after the financial crisis, because we felt that there was a need for a new thinking about our energy security situation, because government can no longer do what they used to do for many years, which is to pour money at a problem. And we need a set of fiscally conservative policies to move beyond the oil monopoly. And we thought that a good place to start would be to identify the very low-hanging fruits that we can apply today to our transportation sector that won't cost a lot of money, increase international cooperation, and open the door to new fuels to compete. We also felt that there was a need to rethink the paradigm that governed America's energy security discourse for the past 40 years since the Arab oil embargo, which basically rested on a number of quite flawed foundations. One is that the United States is heavily dependent on the Middle East for its oil. That has never been the case. Only 9% of America's oil comes from the Middle East. The most it's ever been was 14%. We're not dependent on the Middle East for oil. We do not import a lot of Middle Eastern oil. What we do import from the Middle East is the price of oil. The United States must strive for self-sufficiency. We don't think that this is a desirable goal. We don't think that we need self-sufficiency in energy, not in food, not in anything else. The traditional paradigm has been that if we only drill for more oil, we will be able to pay less at the pump. We've tried that. In fact, people on the right, conservatives, are always pushed for more drilling. People on the left for more efficiency. These are two sides of the same coin. They both argue that if we just learn how to import less oil, we'd be better off. In fact, one title of a book summarizes it: drill here, drill now, pay less. Well, we've done both. Since the beginning of the oil boom, we have reduced our dependency on foreign oil quite substantially, from 60% of our needs to about 36% today. That had no impact on the price of crude. In fact, over the same period of time, the price of oil more than doubled. So what we've learned is that policies that limit us to reducing the import, the volume of import, are not necessarily going to impact price. And what we are saying is that what matters today at a time of financial hardship is not so much the volume of your import, but the price that you pay per barrel of oil. And this price is not going to, in our estimation, the trajectory is not going to go down. And the reason is because if you look here at the what we call the break-even price of oil, that is the price per barrel that OPEC countries need in order to balance their budgets, is today roughly over $100. I mean, if you look at Saudi Arabia, $95 a barrel, that's what Saudi Arabia needs today in order to balance its budget. Anything below it means the country will not be economically viable. But Saudi Arabia is actually in a good position compared to other OPEC countries. If you look at Iran, they need almost $140 to balance their budget. What this chart tells you that when it comes to the OPEC countries, the era of double-digit oil is over. They need triple-digit oil for as long as the eye can see. And that has become much worse since the beginning of the so-called Arab Spring, which required them to increase their budgetary needs, to bribe their subjects in order to prevent them from storming the palace and ending up like Mubarak. So clearly they need a lot of money to keep the system going, and we're going to have to pay this price if we allow cars to drive on nothing but petroleum. We also argue that the current system of CAFE is discriminatory in favor of gasoline. This system, by the way, was put together right after the oil embargo as an energy security solution that was over the years hijacked and became gradually a tool to control greenhouse gas emissions. Well, we need to change the metric there, because as long as the metric of CAFE is miles per gallon, gasoline will always be the favorite fuel, because it's the fuel that packs most energy per volume, and we have to have a different metric. We offer miles per gasoline equivalent gallon. We would like to see more fuels and more blends certified. This is up to the Environmental Protection Agency, but we feel that there is room to certify and approve mid-level blends, new blends that so far have not been approved and sold so that consumers could take advantage of a cheaper fuel. We also think, as mentioned before, that there is a room to streamline some of the regulations with regards to conversion of secondary vehicle conversions. In other words, aftermarket conversion. If someone wants to retrofit their car, there are some very good kits in the market today that can give consumers, for a relatively minor cost, the ability to open up to alternatives. Of course, we have to do it in a safe manner, in an environmentally sensitive manner, but there is a lot that can be done there. Now, back to China. This is what's happening today in China. As you can see, all of these provinces in orange are provinces that have already enacted standards for fuel choice. They have adopted methanol standards, some of them M15, some of them M25, M30, M40, M85, M100. These are all standards, okay? And standardization is very important because in China, by the way, the province has the ability or the power to standardize its own fuels, and they have been taking advantage of it, and that's why we see such a nice proliferation of alternative fuels there, and we expect that there will be very soon a national M15 standard that will apply to all the provinces. Which brings me to our major international recommendation, and that is the creation of US, China, Brazil Alcohol Fuels Alliance, which will be announced and inaugurated this week. And we believe that there is a room to combine the vast experience that has been accumulated in those three countries. The United States is the major blender, as well as Brazil, as we heard, major blender and adopter of ethanol. China is the major blender and adopter of methanol. These are two alcohols together. Those two fuels can coexist with gasoline in the same fuel tank, and there is much that can be done between those three countries, as well as other countries like Israel, Australia, and others that are interested in joining such an effort. So we are happy to talk with anybody who's interested in this alliance. Feel free to approach us here or after the conference. So what we expect to achieve is to really put together or put forth a set of new ideas that, by the way, do not negate the old efforts to increase domestic production, improve the efficiency of our cars. These are all important things to do regardless. There is nothing wrong with increased oil production or gas production. There is nothing wrong with cars that give you more miles per gallon. But we live in economic times. We live in times that we all struggle to stay financially viable. We live at a time that we could be hit any time with another recession. We cannot afford to continue to put on the road today globally 85 million vehicles that can run on nothing but petroleum, each with a life cycle of 15 or 16 years, wedding ourselves to petroleum for the next 15 years, at a time that the Middle East continues to be unstable, at a time that we are in the midst of this endless war between Sunnis and Shiites, at a time that we cannot barely contain the proliferation of nuclear weapons. This is a very, very dangerous thing to do, to continue to put on the road every year 85 million cars that are allergic to anything other than petroleum fuel. So I hope that we can develop this, get those recommendations adopted, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. That was a fascinating talk, really interesting coverage of these topics. I had just one or two questions. I guess the first one I had is such an interesting idea about making this the CAFE system in the United States. This is our corporate average fuel economy standards, to allow for credit to give automakers an incentive to build more cars that use more flexible fuels of a wide variety. But I guess my question for you is, what about the infrastructure to get that fuel out there? And isn't there a cost that has to be borne by somebody to build out, whether it's compressed natural gas distribution, liquid natural gas distribution, or even electric vehicle charging stations? As we've seen with the business model around EV charging, it can be tough. And as Mr. Kandel was saying earlier, there are a lot of chicken and egg problems. This strikes me as one of them. How does your plan get at that issue?
Well, it took many years to build the petroleum infrastructure, and it will take some years to build new infrastructure. I think that none of this will happen if we don't have cars. So again, when you look at this chicken and egg situation, you have to identify the chicken. The chicken is clearly the cars. Once you have cars, they're going to be an economic rationale to produce fuels, to build infrastructure. We've got to start with the cars. And therefore, I think that page one is to make sure we have enough vehicle platforms. And I think that nobody is going to invest in infrastructure. Nobody is going to invest in fuels that could not be used. So we have to get our sequence in order, and then market forces, I believe, will take care of it.
Thanks very much. And with that, I think I'm going to introduce our next panel, if that's okay.
Yeah, we've got the next panel coming up now. It's entitled Policies, Regulations.